Ugly daughter was given to Dragon Lord as punishment, but he loved her like no other. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The transport shuttle trembled as it entered the atmosphere of Draconis Prime. Inside, Lily Morgan sat alone, her head bowed, tears streaming down her scarred face. She had been selected as the annual tribute to the Dragon Lords of Draconis, a punishment disguised as an ambassadorial offering, a tradition born from humanity's failed rebellion 20 years ago. The Draconian Empire had ruled over the human colonies for nearly a century. Their species was physically imposing, standing over 7 feet tall with scaled skin that shimmered in various metallic hues. Their elongated faces, reptilian eyes, and the bony crests that extended from their skulls had earned them the nickname Dragon Lords among humans. The Draconians possessed technology far beyond human understanding and had conquered dozens of systems before encountering Earth's colonies. When humans had attempted to rebel against Draconian rule 20 years ago, the resulting conflict had been brief and devastating. Instead of obliterating humanity entirely, the Dragon Emperor had instituted an unusual form of retribution. Each year, one human from the rebellious colonies would be selected to serve in the Imperial Palace for the remainder of their life. This year, that human was Lily Morgan. At 25 years old, Lily had spent most of her life on the mining colony of New Verdant. The harsh environment had never been kind to her, but fate had been crueler still. A mining accident when she was 16 had left her face and upper body severely scarred and disfigured. The medical facilities on New Verdant were rudimentary at best, and reconstructive treatments were considered a luxury that the struggling colony could not afford. The colonial governor, facing pressure from Draconian officials to select this year's tribute, had chosen Lily for reasons he claimed were purely logistical. She had no immediate family, no specialized skills critical to the colony, and her disability made her less productive in the mines. But Lily knew the truth. She had overheard the governor's aides speaking candidly. "Send the ugly one. At least we will not be wasting a valuable colonist, and her appearance will be an insult to their vanity." And so here she was, approaching the gleaming capital of the Draconian Empire, a living insult wrapped in the guise of a diplomatic tribute. As the shuttle descended toward the sprawling imperial city, Lily caught glimpses of soaring crystal spires and massive floating platforms through the viewport. Everything was bathed in a golden light from Draconis Prime's twin suns, making the city appear as if it were carved from amber and bronze. The landing was smoother than Lily expected. When the shuttle doors hissed open, she was greeted by a retinue of Draconian attendants in gleaming ceremonial armor. "Human tribute," one of them addressed her in accented standard English. "You will follow us to the preparation chambers. You will be presented to Lord Talon at sunset." Lily nodded mutely and followed the attendants down the shuttle ramp. Her plain gray jumpsuit stood in stark contrast to the ornate environment around her. The spaceport was a marvel of engineering, with gravity platforms that gently guided vessels into docking positions and atmospheric barriers that allowed open-air landing pads without the need for enclosed hangars. The Draconians led her to a sleek transport vehicle that hovered several inches above the ground. As they traveled through the city, Lily pressed her face against the window, momentarily forgetting her circumstances in the wonder of seeing the alien metropolis up close. Massive buildings seemed to defy gravity, their impossible architectures creating a skyline that looked more like an artist's fantasy than a functional city. Vehicles of all sizes moved in three-dimensional traffic patterns, weaving between structures with precision that would be impossible without advanced AI guidance systems. Eventually, they arrived at what appeared to be a smaller palace adjacent to the central imperial compound. The attendants guided Lily through hallways decorated with what she assumed were artistic masterpieces and historical artifacts from across the galaxy. They finally stopped at an ornate door. "These will be your preparation quarters," the lead attendant said. "The master steward will arrive shortly to begin your orientation and preparation for presentation." The door slid open to reveal living quarters more luxurious than anything Lily had ever seen, let alone inhabited. The main room featured a panoramic window overlooking the city, furniture crafted from materials she couldn't identify, and lighting that seemed to emanate from the surfaces themselves rather than from any visible fixtures. Left alone, Lily cautiously explored the space. There was a sleeping chamber with a bed that adjusted to her body when she experimentally pressed a hand against it. The bathing facilities were equally perplexing, with no recognizable controls, but rather surfaces that seemed to respond to touch and gesture. It responds to thought patterns as well, once calibrated to your neural signature, a voice said from behind her. Lily whirled around to find a Draconian standing in the doorway to the bathing chamber. Unlike the guards, this one wore robes of deep blue embroidered with silver patterns. The Draconian scales were a pale blue-silver, and the head crest was more elaborate than those of the guards. "I am Varric, Master Steward to Lord Talon of House Azurin," the Draconian said with a formal bow. "I will be overseeing your preparation and training." "Preparation for what, exactly?" Lily asked, finding her voice at last. "No one has told me what I am expected to do here." Varric's reptilian face was difficult for Lily to read, but she thought she detected something like surprise in the slight widening of those vertical pupilled eyes. "You were not briefed on your duties?" Varric asked. "I was told I am the annual tribute, that I would serve in the Imperial Palace for the remainder of my life," Lily said, her voice small but steady. "Nothing more specific." Varric made a sound that Lily couldn't interpret, something between a hiss and a sigh. How typical of the colonial administrators to neglect such details. The steward gestured toward the main room. "Please sit. There is much to explain." Lily followed Varric and perched nervously on the edge of a chair that conformed comfortably to her body despite her tension. "Lord Talon of House Azurin is the Emperor's nephew and a high-ranking member of the Imperial Scientific Council," Varric explained. "He has been granted the honor of receiving this year's human tribute to serve as his personal assistant and cultural liaison. You will attend to his needs, accompany him to scientific and diplomatic functions, and assist in his research when required." "Research?" Lily asked. "What kind of research?" "Lord Talon specializes in xenobiology and cultural adaptation patterns," Varric said. "Your presence will provide him with direct observational data." In other words, Lily thought bitterly, she was to be both servant and research specimen. "I understand," she said aloud. "I doubt that you do, but you will in time," Varric responded, not unkindly. "Now, we must prepare you for the presentation ceremony. It will begin in 4 hours." What followed was a whirlwind of activity. Attendants arrived to measure Lily for appropriate clothing. Others brought foods that she was encouraged to try to expand her palate. Varric provided a steady stream of information about basic protocol, Draconian customs, and the immediate expectations for her behavior during the presentation ceremony. Throughout it all, Lily noticed something curious. Not once did any of the Draconians comment on, or even seem to notice her scars. On New Verdant, she had grown accustomed to averted gazes, poorly disguised grimaces, or overly sympathetic looks. Here, the Draconians treated her disfigurement as if it simply didn't exist. As the time for the ceremony approached, Lily found herself dressed in a simple but elegant outfit that seemed designed to balance Draconian aesthetic preferences with human comfort. The deep blue fabric, the same color as Varric's robes, she noted, was lighter than it appeared and moved fluidly with her body. "Blue is the color of House Azurin," Varric explained when Lily commented on the choice. "By wearing it, you are identified as being under Lord Talon's protection and authority." Protection was not a concept Lily had associated with her situation until now, and she found it a curious choice of words. When it was time, Varric led Lily through corridors that grew increasingly grand until they reached a ceremonial hall where several Draconians waited. The room featured a raised dais at one end, upon which stood a single Draconian who immediately commanded attention. Even to Lily's untrained eye, this Draconian was different. His scales were a deep cobalt blue with highlights that seemed to shift between silver and gold depending on how the light struck them. The crest on his head was more pronounced and elegant than those of the others, and his eyes were a startling amber color. He wore robes of midnight blue with intricate patterns that appeared to move subtly, as if alive. "Lord Talon of House Azurin," Varric announced formally. "I present to you Lily Morgan of New Verdant, this year's tribute from the human colonies. Lily, as instructed, bowed deeply and kept her eyes lowered. "My lord," she said, the formal greeting feeling strange on her tongue. There was a moment of silence that stretched uncomfortably. Then footsteps and the rustle of fabric. A clawed hand gently tilted her chin upward, forcing her to meet those amber eyes. "Look at me when you address me," Lord Talon said, his voice deeper and more resonant than Varric's. "I have no use for a servant who cannot meet my gaze." Startled, Lily stared directly into those alien eyes. Up close, she could see that the vertical pupils were ringed with flecks of gold that matched the highlights on his scales. "Yes, my lord," she said, fighting the urge to look away. Lord Talon studied her face for what felt like an eternity, his expression unreadable to Lily. Then, to her shock, he smiled, an expression that revealed rows of sharp teeth, but somehow managed to convey genuine warmth. "Good," he said. "You have courage. That will serve you well here." He turned to address the assembled Draconians. "The ceremony is complete. The tribute is accepted." With that abrupt conclusion, most of the Draconians filed out of the hall, leaving only Varric and a few others who appeared to be part of Lord Talon's personal staff. "Come," Lord Talon said to Lily. "Walk with me. We have much to discuss." Lily fell into step beside the Draconian lord, having to walk quickly to match his longer stride. They left the ceremonial hall and entered a garden unlike any Lily had ever seen. Plants that seemed part crystal, part organic matter caught the light of the setting suns and refracted it in dazzling patterns. Water flowed upward in defiance of gravity, forming liquid sculptures that shifted and changed as they watched. "Your governor selected you with the intention of insulting me," Lord Talon said without preamble. "He believes that your appearance would offend Draconian aesthetic sensibilities." Lily stumbled slightly, both at the directness of the statement and the casual way it was delivered. "Ah, yes. That was my understanding as well, my lord." Lord Talon made a sound that Lily would later learn was the Draconian equivalent of derisive laughter. "Then your governor understands even less about my people than I thought." He stopped beside a pool of what appeared to be liquid silver and turned to face her fully. "Draconians do not judge physical appearance by the same standards as humans. What you call disfigurement, we see simply as a pattern. Different from the expected, perhaps, but a pattern nonetheless. And patterns have their own inherent beauty." He gestured to his own scaled skin. "My coloration is considered unusual among my kind. In ancient times, before we became a spacefaring civilization, those with my coloration were sometimes killed at birth, believed to be touched by ill fortune." His amber eyes held Lily's gaze. "Prejudice based on appearance is not unique to humanity, but our species has moved beyond such primitive responses. It seems humanity has yet to do so." Lily didn't know how to respond. This was not at all what she had expected from her new master. "I selected you from the candidates your governor proposed," Lord Talon continued, resuming their walk. "You selected me?" Lily echoed, confused. "I was told the governor chose me. Your governor provided a list of potential tributes. The final selection is always made by the receiving lord," Talon explained. "I chose you because your profile showed remarkable intelligence and adaptability despite limited educational opportunities. Your survival after your injury demonstrated exceptional resilience. These qualities are far more valuable to me than conventional physical attributes." Lily felt as if the ground beneath her feet had shifted. She had spent years accepting that her value as a person had diminished with her disfigurement. To hear this alien lord dismiss that notion so completely was disorienting. "What will be expected of me, my lord?" she asked, seeking firmer ground. "As Varric likely explained, you will serve as my personal assistant and cultural liaison," Talon said. "But perhaps not in the way you imagine. I am engaged in research that may fundamentally change the relationship between our species. Your perspective will be invaluable." "What kind of research?" Lord Talon paused by a plant that unfurled luminescent fronds in response to their proximity. "I believe the rebellion 20 years ago occurred because of fundamental misunderstandings between our species. Cultural and biological differences that led to mutual misinterpretation of intentions and actions." He touched one of the fronds gently, and it curled around his finger in response. My research aims to identify and codify these differences to create a framework for genuine understanding. Not mere tolerance or subjugation, but true comprehension of each other's perspectives. And you think I can help with this? Lily asked skeptically. I know you can, Talon replied with certainty. You have lived your life navigating the space between acceptance and rejection within your own society. You understand what it means to be seen as other, even among your own kind. That gives you insight most humans lack. Lily felt a strange mix of emotions at these words. There was anger at the reminder of her treatment on New Verdant, but also an unexpected sense of validation. This alien had seen value in an aspect of her experience that she had only ever viewed as suffering to be endured. I will do my best to assist you, my lord, she said finally. I expect nothing less, Talon replied. And you may address me simply as Talon when we are speaking privately. The formality is unnecessary when we are working together. As they completed their circuit of the garden and returned to the entrance of what Lily now understood to be Talon's private residence within the greater Imperial compound, the Draconian Lord turned to her once more. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, your real work begins. True to his word, Lily's work began early the next morning. After a night of surprisingly restful sleep in the most comfortable bed she had ever experienced, she was awakened by Varric bringing a light breakfast and outlining the day's schedule. Lord Talon requests your presence in his research laboratory in 1 hour, the steward informed her. After you have eaten, I will show you the way. The laboratory turned out to be a vast complex occupying an entire wing of Talon's residence. When Varric escorted her inside, Lily's jaw dropped at the array of technology and biological specimens surrounding her. Some areas contained what appeared to be medical equipment, others housed specimens preserved in translucent containers, and still others featured holographic displays showing rotating models of various life forms, including, she noted with a shiver, human anatomical models. Talon was examining data on a floating display that responded to his hand movements, expanding and contracting sections as he gestured. When he noticed Lily's arrival, he dismissed the display with a wave. Ah, good. You're here, he said. Did you rest well? Yes, Mael. Yes, Talon. She corrected herself, remembering his preference for private conversations. Excellent. We have much to accomplish today. He moved to another workstation and activated a display that showed what appeared to be linguistic patterns. First, I would like to assess your cognitive and learning capabilities. What followed was the most intensive intellectual examination Lily had ever experienced. Talon presented her with problems ranging from mathematical puzzles to ethical dilemmas, from pattern recognition tests to creative challenges. Throughout it all, he observed her responses carefully, occasionally making notes or adjusting the difficulty of the questions based on her performance. To Lily's surprise, she found herself enjoying the challenge. On New Verdant, education was primarily functional, enough reading, writing, and arithmetic to perform necessary colony tasks, with little emphasis on abstract thinking or creative problem-solving. Here, Talon seemed genuinely interested in the way her mind worked, not just in the answers she provided. By midday, when Varric brought them a light meal, Lily was mentally exhausted but strangely invigorated. Talon seemed pleased with the results of his assessment. You have an unusual thought process, he told her as they ate. You approach problems from unexpected angles. It's quite fascinating. Is that good or bad? Lily asked. Neither. It's simply different, Talon replied. And difference is precisely what interests me. The Draconian education system emphasizes logical progression and established methodologies. Creativity is channeled in specific, approved directions. Your approach suggests human cognition may be less structured, more adaptable. After their meal, Talon introduced Lily to what would become one of her primary tasks, helping him analyze and interpret human cultural artifacts. The laboratory contained an extensive collection of human literature, art, music, and historical records, some of which Lily recognized, others which were completely unfamiliar to her. The Empire has been collecting human cultural materials since first contact, Talon explained. But collection without understanding is merely hoarding. I want to know what these creations mean to humans. They spent the afternoon with Talon selecting various pieces and asking Lily to explain their significance. Some were easy, popular entertainment that even on the frontier colonies was well known. Others were more difficult, representing Earth cultures or historical periods Lily knew little about. In these cases, Talon encouraged her to speculate, to relate the unfamiliar to her own experiences. Even when you do not know the specific context, your human perspective provides insights I cannot achieve on my own, he told her. As days passed, Lily settled into a routine. Mornings were typically spent in the laboratory, afternoons with cultural analysis, and evenings often found her joining Talon for meals where they discussed the day's findings. Sometimes Talon would receive visitors, other Draconian scientists or officials, and Lily would observe their interactions, occasionally being called upon to provide a human perspective on whatever matter was being discussed. To her surprise, her opinion seemed genuinely valued, not merely tolerated. More surprising still was the respect with which Talon treated her, not as a servant or specimen, but as a collaborator. A month into her new life, Lily was assisting Talon with analyzing human literature when he made an unexpected request. "Tell me about your scars," he said. Lily's hands, which had been manipulating a holographic display of poetry fragments, froze in midair. "What about them?" she asked cautiously. "How did they occur? What was the medical treatment you received? And most importantly, how did they affect your life among your own kind?" Lily took a deep breath. No one had ever asked her about her scars so directly before. On New Verdant, they were either the subject of whispers behind her back or studiously ignored to her face. "There was an accident in the mines," she began slowly. "A pressure valve failed on one of the steam processing units. I was working nearby when it exploded. The steam and superheated metal fragments." She gestured to her face and upper body. "The medical facilities on New Verdant aren't advanced. They saved my life, but reconstruction surgery wasn't an option. The colony couldn't spare the resources." Talon listened intently, his amber eyes fixed on her face. "And afterward, how did others respond to you?" Lily laughed bitterly. "How do you think? I became the scarred girl. Children would dare each other to touch me, as if disfigurement was contagious. Adults were more subtle, but no less cruel. Some were kind out of pity, which was almost worse. Yet you survived. You adapted," Talon observed. "I didn't have much choice," Lily said. "There is always choice," Talon countered. "You could have surrendered to despair. Many would. You did not." He moved closer, studying her scars with scientific interest rather than revulsion or pity. "May I?" he asked, raising a hand toward her face. After a moment's hesitation, Lily nodded. Talon's scaled fingers gently traced the pattern of scars across her cheek and down her neck to where they disappeared beneath her clothing. His touch was cool and surprisingly gentle. Among Draconians, patterns on the skin can denote lineage, achievements, or life experiences, he said as he examined the network of scars. Warriors sometimes deliberately scar themselves to commemorate significant battles. Scholars may do the same to mark important discoveries. He withdrew his hand. "Your scars tell the story of your survival. In Draconian culture, they would be seen as marks of strength, not flaws to be hidden." Lily felt tears welling in her eyes and blinked them back. "That's a nice sentiment," she said, not entirely able to keep the skepticism from her voice. "It is not sentiment. It is cultural perspective," Talon corrected, "which proves my point about our species' misunderstandings. What humans see as disfigurement, Draconians might view as distinction." He returned to his workstation. "This is precisely why cross-species comprehension is so vital. Without it, we interpret each other's actions and values through our own cultural lenses, often reaching entirely incorrect conclusions." Over the next several months, Lily's role expanded beyond the laboratory. Talon began taking her to scientific conferences and diplomatic functions, where her presence invariably caused a stir, not because of her appearance, but because no human tribute had ever been granted such public visibility before. At these events, Lily observed the complex social hierarchies and power dynamics of Draconian society. She learned to recognize the subtle signals conveyed through posture, crest positioning, and scale coloration that communicated status, mood, and intention among the Draconians. She began to understand their humor, their values, and their history in ways that made them seem less alien. And as her understanding grew, so did her value to Talon's research. Their discussions became more nuanced, their collaborative analysis more insightful. Lily found herself genuinely engaged in the work, seeing its potential importance for both species. On one occasion, they attended a gathering at the Imperial Palace itself. Lily, now dressed in specially designed formal attire that incorporated both draconian aesthetic elements and human comfort considerations, stood at Talon's side as he presented some of their preliminary findings to the Imperial Scientific Council. Human adaptability manifests not merely in their physical resilience, but in their cognitive flexibility, Talon explained to the assembled draconian dignitaries. Where our species excels at systematic analysis and optimization within established parameters, humans demonstrate remarkable capacity for lateral thinking and novel approaches to problem solving. He gestured to Lily. My assistant has provided invaluable insights that would have been impossible to achieve through mere observation or data analysis. Direct collaborative engagement has proven essential to genuine cross-species understanding. After the presentation, as they moved through the crowded reception area, Lily noticed the speculative glances and whispered conversations their presence generated. Though she had grown accustomed to being the object of curiosity, something about the atmosphere felt different this evening. Is something wrong? She asked Talon quietly. Not wrong, he replied, guiding her toward a less crowded area of the vast hall. But there are political currents at work that concern me. Not everyone appreciates the direction of my research. Before he could elaborate, they were approached by a draconian whose scales were a deep burgundy color with black ridges along his pronounced head crest. He wore robes of such elaborate design that Lily immediately recognized him as someone of significant rank. Lord Talon. The draconian greeted, with a formal gesture that Lily had learned indicated acknowledgement between equals. Your presentation was most interesting. High Counselor Dravax, Talon returned the gesture. I'm pleased you found it so. The High Counselor's gaze shifted to Lily, his vertical pupils narrowing slightly. And this is your human assistant. The annual tribute. How novel to see one given such a public role. Lily Morgan, Talon introduced her formally. Her contributions to my research have been substantial. Lily bowed in the manner she had been taught was appropriate when being introduced to a high-ranking draconian. High Counselor, she said respectfully. Dravax made a sound that Lily now recognized as the draconian equivalent of a contemplative hum. Tell me, human, do you believe your kind can ever truly understand the draconian mind? Are we yours? I believe understanding is possible, even if perfect translation of experience never can be, Lily replied carefully. Just as I can never know exactly what it feels like to have scales or a tail, but I can comprehend their function and significance to your species. Dravax's crest flattened slightly, a sign of surprise or reassessment, Lily had learned. Eloquently put, he conceded. Though I wonder if such philosophical niceties have practical application in governance. That is precisely what my research aims to determine, Talon interjected smoothly. How better understanding can lead to more effective governance and cooperation. Ah yes, cooperation. Dravax's tone made the words sound vaguely distasteful. A fascinating concept, though historically, clarity of hierarchy has proven more efficient. He made the formal gesture of departure. I will follow your research with interest, Lord Talon. It represents a unique approach to human management. As Dravax moved away, Lily felt a tension in Talon that she had rarely observed before. His scales seemed to darken slightly, a physiological response she had come to associate with concern or anger. He doesn't approve of your work, Lily observed quietly. Dravax represents a faction within the Imperial Court that views humans as a resource to be exploited, not a species to be understood, Talon explained in a low voice. They see little value in comprehension beyond what is necessary for efficient control. And what do you see? Lily asked, suddenly needing to hear his answer. Talon looked down at her, his amber eyes intent. I see potential. For both our species. The Draconian Empire has conquered many worlds, but conquest without understanding leads to stagnation. True growth comes from the integration of different perspectives. He glanced around the hall, at the ornate displays of imperial power and wealth. The Empire believes itself to be at the pinnacle of achievement. I believe we have much still to learn. That evening marked a turning point in Lily's understanding of her position. What she had initially perceived as an academic exercise, Talon's research into human and draconian cultural differences, was in fact something far more politically charged. He was, in his careful, methodical way, advocating for a fundamental shift in the relationship between their species. And she was not merely his assistant, but living proof of his theories, evidence that collaboration between their kinds could yield insights impossible through domination alone. As months passed, Lily's integration into Talon's household and research became more complete. She was given access to draconian educational materials, learning their language and history directly rather than through translation. Talon encouraged her to document her observations and analyses, treating her contributions as valuable additions to the scientific record rather than mere anecdotal supplements. One evening, as they shared a meal in Talon's private dining chamber, something that had become a regular occurrence, he raised a subject they had not previously discussed. "The annual ceremony approaches," he said. "The new human tribute will arrive in 2 weeks." Lily felt a strange twist of emotion at these words. She had been so absorbed in her work with Talon that she had lost track of the passage of time. A year had nearly passed since her arrival on Draconis Prime. "What happens to me when they arrive?" she asked, setting down her eating utensils. Talon tilted his head, a gesture of confusion. "Nothing happens to you. You will continue your work here." "But I thought," Lily began, then stopped, uncertain how to proceed. "You thought you would be replaced?" Talon seemed genuinely surprised by the idea. "The tribute is an annual political requirement. It has nothing to do with your position here. Your role is based on your capabilities and our ongoing research needs, not on ceremonial considerations." Relief flooded through Lily, followed quickly by confusion at the intensity of that relief. When had she begun to value her place here so highly? When had the thought of leaving Talon's household become something she dreaded rather than longed for? "I'm glad," she said simply, unable to fully articulate the complex emotions behind those words. Talon studied her face with the intensity she had come to know well, the focus of a scientist observing something fascinating and unexpected. "You have changed since your arrival," he said. "Your confidence, your manner, even your physical bearing." "I suppose I have," Lily agreed. Living among beings who did not recoil from her appearance, who valued her mind and perspective, had indeed changed her. The defensive posture she had adopted on New Verdant, head slightly lowered, shoulders hunched, as if trying to make herself less visible, had gradually straightened. She met gazes directly now, spoke her thoughts without hesitation. "The changes are most evident when you interact with other humans," Talon observed. This was true. In recent months, as Talon's research had gained attention, they had occasionally met with human diplomats and traders who visited Draconis Prime. Lily had noticed their surprise at her confident manner and the respect with which Talon treated her. Some had even sought her advice on navigating draconian customs and protocols. "Is that part of your research too?" Lily asked with a small smile. "Observing how I interact with my own kind." "Everything is data," Talon replied, his mouth forming the slight curve that Lily now recognized as his version of a smile. "But my interest is not merely scientific." Before Lily could ask what he meant by that cryptic statement, Varric entered with an urgent message. Talon excused himself, leaving Lily to ponder his words and her own complicated feelings. The arrival of the new tribute 2 weeks later was marked by considerably less ceremony than Lily's own had been. The young man, Ethan Cole, from the agricultural colony of New Terra, was visibly terrified despite his attempts to maintain composure. Lily, who had insisted on being present for his arrival, felt a surge of sympathy remembering her own fear a year earlier. "Welcome to Draconis Prime," she greeted him after the formal presentation was complete. "I'm Lily Morgan. I was last year's tribute." Ethan's eyes widened as they took in her scarred face, but to his credit, his gaze didn't linger there. "They told me about you," he said, "that you work directly with Lord Talon on some kind of research project." "That's right," Lily confirmed. "And you'll be working with High Engineer Kelvin on atmospheric terraforming projects, from what I understand." Your background in agricultural environmental systems made you particularly suited for that work. They selected me because of my skills? Ethan asked, clearly surprised. I was told I was chosen by lottery. Lily exchanged a glance with Talon, who had observed the exchange silently. The selection process is more thoughtful than most humans realize, she explained. Your placement is based on where your abilities can be most effectively utilized. As Varric led Ethan away to his own quarters, Talon turned to Lily. You handled that well. He seemed reassured by your presence. I remember how overwhelming all of this is at first, Lily said. Having another human explain things might make the transition easier for him. Would you like to take on that responsibility? Helping new tributes adjust to life here? Talon asked. Yes, I think I would, Lily replied, realizing as she spoke that she was now thinking of Draconis Prime as home, not as a place of exile. That evening, alone in her quarters, Lily reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in the past year. She had arrived as a sacrifice, expecting to live out her days in servitude and isolation. Instead, she had found purpose, respect, and a sense of belonging she had never known on New Verdant. And Talon, her feelings toward the Draconian Lord had evolved in ways she had never anticipated. From fear to gratitude, from respect to genuine affection. She valued his intellect, his perspective, and the gentle consideration he showed her despite the vast differences between them. Was it possible to bridge such differences completely? To truly understand a being so fundamentally unlike oneself? Lily wasn't certain, but she was increasingly convinced that the attempt was worthwhile. The following months brought new challenges as Talon's research began to attract more serious political attention. The faction led by High Counselor Dravax grew more vocal in their opposition to what they termed excessive accommodation of human perspectives. Meanwhile, a smaller but influential group of progressive Draconians rallied around Talon's work, seeing in it the potential for a more stable and mutually beneficial relationship with the human colonies. Lily found herself increasingly involved in these political discussions, sometimes serving as the sole human voice in debates about the future relationship between their species. It was a responsibility she had never sought but found she could not refuse, not when the stakes included the well-being of countless humans on dozens of colonial worlds. One afternoon, as she and Talon were reviewing data in the laboratory, an urgent message arrived from the Imperial Palace. The Emperor had summoned Talon to a private audience immediately. This is unexpected, Talon said, his scales darkening slightly with concern. Private Imperial audiences are rare, and rarely bring good news. Should I continue the analysis while you're gone? Lily asked. No, Talon decided after a moment's consideration. You will accompany me. Lily's surprise must have shown on her face, because Talon added, the Emperor specified that I should bring you. It seems our research has attracted the highest level of attention. The journey to the Imperial Palace was tense and silent. Lily, dressed hastily in her formal attire, tried to prepare herself mentally for an audience with the being who ruled not just Draconis Prime, but hundreds of worlds across dozens of star systems. The Emperor was rarely seen in public, his decrees and decisions conveyed through a complex bureaucracy of counselors and administrators. The Imperial Palace was a structure of such grandeur that it made Talon's residence seem modest by comparison. Massive crystalline towers rose thousands of feet into the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of solid light. The gravitational effects Lily had observed elsewhere in the city were more pronounced here, with water, fire, and even what appeared to be fragments of planetary matter suspended in carefully choreographed arrangements. They were escorted through a series of increasingly ornate chambers, each guarded by Draconians in armor of such elaborate design that Lily wondered how they could move in it. Finally, they were shown into a vast circular room whose ceiling opened directly to the sky above. In the center of the room, seated on a throne that appeared to be carved from a single massive gemstone, was the Emperor. Even among Draconians, the Emperor was physically impressive, larger than Talon by at least a foot, with scales of deep gold that caught the light with an almost blinding intensity. The crest that extended from his head was more elaborate than any Lily had seen, and his eyes were a startling shade of violet that seemed to glow from within. Talon prostrated himself in a formal gesture of submission that Lily had never seen him perform before. After a moment's hesitation, she did the same, pressing her forehead to the cool stone floor. "Rise, nephew." The Emperor's voice was deep and resonant, seeming to vibrate through Lily's very bones. "And bring your human assistant closer. I wish to see her clearly." Talon rose and gestured for Lily to do the same. They approached the throne together, stopping at a respectful distance. "So this is the human who has helped spark such controversy in my court," the Emperor said, studying Lily with those unsettling violet eyes. "Smaller than I expected." Despite her nervousness, Lily felt a flicker of indignation at being discussed as if she were not present. Remembering Talon's teachings about draconian respect being tied to self-assertion, she straightened her posture and met the Emperor's gaze directly. "Most humans are smaller than draconians, Your Imperial Majesty," she said. "But we compensate in other ways." A sound like distant thunder rolled through the chamber, and with a start, Lily realized the Emperor was laughing. "Indeed you do," he said. "Courage being one of them, it seems." He turned his attention to Talon. "Your reports suggested she was exceptional, nephew. I see you did not exaggerate." "Lily Morgan has been instrumental to my research, Your Majesty," Talon replied. "Her insights have allowed progress that would have been impossible otherwise." The Emperor rose from his throne and descended the few steps to their level. Up close, he was even more imposing, his physical presence radiating power and authority. "Walk with me," he commanded, not waiting for a response before moving toward an arched doorway that led to what appeared to be a private garden. As they followed, Lily noticed that the plants in this garden were unlike those in Talon's. Where Talon's garden featured a harmonious blend of species from various worlds, the Emperor's seemed to contain only the most dramatic and unusual specimens. Carnivorous plants with crystalline teeth, flowers that emitted visible sound waves, trees whose fruits appeared to be small contained galaxies. "Your research has created quite a stir, Talon," the Emperor said as they walked. "Half my council insists you are undermining the very foundations of imperial authority with your theories of cross-species understanding. The other half argues you are pioneering the future of imperial governance." "And what does Your Majesty believe?" Talon asked carefully. The Emperor stopped beside a plant that appeared to be breathing, its translucent tissues expanding and contracting in a steady rhythm. "I believe that 20 years of crushing the human rebellions through force has brought us no closer to true stability in the human territories. The annual tribute system was intended as a symbol of human submission, yet here stands your tribute, speaking to me as an equal." He turned his violet gaze on Lily. "That should anger me. By all traditional imperial doctrine, it represents a failure of the system. And yet," he studied her face, her scars, her steady gaze. "I find myself intrigued rather than outraged. Human potential is wasted under pure subjugation, Your Majesty," Talon said. "My research suggests that a collaborative approach would yield greater benefits for the Empire while reducing resistance from the human colonies." "So I have read in your reports," the Emperor acknowledged. "But theory and practice are different matters. High Counselor Dravax argues persuasively that showing any weakness in our stance toward the human colonies will invite further rebellion." "Respect is not weakness," Lily said before she could stop herself. Both Draconians turned to look at her, and Lily momentarily feared she had overstepped. But the Emperor merely made that rumbling sound again, his laugh. "Speak freely, human," he said. "You have earned that right through your work with my nephew." Emboldened, Lily continued. "The colonies rebel because they have no voice, no agency in determining their own futures. They are treated as resources rather than people. Give them a stake in the Empire's success, and they will support it rather than fight it." "A stake? What form would that take?" the Emperor asked. "Representation," Lily replied without hesitation. "A voice in decisions that affect human worlds. Fair trade agreements rather than exploitative extraction policies. Educational and technological opportunities." "You ask for much," the Emperor observed. "I suggest a path to long-term stability," Lily countered. "Continuing the current approach guarantees ongoing conflict, which costs the Empire resources and lives." The Emperor was silent for a long moment, his gaze moving between Lily and Talon. Finally, he spoke. There is wisdom in what you say, but implementing such changes would face significant resistance from conservative factions. Change always faces resistance, Your Majesty, Talon said. But the greatest emperors in our history are remembered for their vision, not their adherence to tradition. Another long silence followed. Then the emperor made a gesture Lily didn't recognize, and the garden around them seemed to shift, the plants rearranging themselves into new patterns. I have made a decision, he announced. Talon, you will formalize your research into a comprehensive proposal for restructuring imperial policy toward the human colonies. You will present this proposal to the full Imperial Council in 3 months' time. He turned to Lily. You, human, will assist in this task. Your perspective will be essential to crafting policies that will be acceptable to your kind. Lily bowed deeply. I am honored by your trust, Your Majesty. Do not thank me yet, the Emperor cautioned. This path will not be easy. Dravax and his supporters will oppose you at every turn. Some may resort to measures beyond mere political maneuvering. He looked at Talon. You have placed yourself in a precarious position, nephew. I cannot openly support you until you have proven your theories viable. Until then, you must rely on your own resources and allies. I understand, Your Majesty, Talon replied with a formal bow. As they were escorted from the imperial presence, Lily felt a mixture of exhilaration and dread. They had been given an extraordinary opportunity, but also placed in significant danger. The Emperor's warning about Dravax had been clear. They faced opposition that might not limit itself to political means. Back at Talon's residence, they immediately began planning their approach to the monumental task before them. Talon summoned his most trusted researchers and advisors, while Lily reached out to Ethan Cole and the handful of other human tributes on Draconis Prime whose expertise might be valuable. The weeks that followed were the most intense of Lily's life. Days stretched into nights as they worked to translate Talon's years of research into concrete policy recommendations. They analyzed economic data, studied historical precedents from other conquered species, and projected outcomes for various approaches to human colonial governance. Throughout this process, Lily found herself working ever more closely with Talon. Their already strong working relationship deepened into something more profound as they navigated the complex political and cultural terrain together. She came to anticipate his thoughts before he expressed them, while he seemed increasingly attuned to her emotional states despite the physiological differences between their species. One night, after most of the other researchers had retired, Lily and Talon remained in his study, reviewing a particularly complicated section of their proposal dealing with resource allocation between Draconian and human worlds. This approach presupposes that resources are more valuable than innovation, Lily argued, highlighting a passage on the holographic display. But human history shows that necessity drives invention. Limited resources can actually accelerate technological development if coupled with educational opportunity. Talon considered this, his amber eyes reflecting the blue light of the display. A valid point. The Empire's approach has typically been to control resources to maintain power. The idea that scarcity could be beneficial in certain contexts is counterintuitive to Draconian thinking. That's why we need both perspectives, Lily said. What seems obvious to me might never occur to you, and vice versa. Indeed. Talon deactivated the display and moved to the window that overlooked the nighttime cityscape. Our collaboration has been more successful than I ever anticipated, he said after a moment. You have exceeded every expectation, Lily Morgan. Something in his tone made Lily look up sharply. There was a warmth there, a personal quality that went beyond professional approval. I've had an excellent teacher, she replied, joining him at the window. No, Talon said, turning to face her. You have had opportunity and freedom to apply your natural abilities. I provided the environment, but the insights, the courage, the adaptability, those are uniquely yours. In the year and a half since her arrival, Lily had become quite adept at reading Draconian expressions and body language. Now, she saw something in Talon's posture, in the way his scales had taken on a slight iridescent sheen, that suggested an emotional state she had not observed in him before. Talon, she began, uncertain how to proceed. A sharp sound from the communication system interrupted whatever she might have said. Varric's voice came through, urgent and tense. Lord Talon, security sensors have detected unauthorized entry at multiple points. Protocol suggests immediate relocation to secure Area Alpha. Talon's demeanor changed instantly, his scales darkening to deep navy as he activated the security display. How many intruders? At least 6, possibly more, Varric replied. They appear to be using high-grade cloaking technology. Our systems are having difficulty maintaining tracking. Dravax, Talon said grimly. He's moved faster than I anticipated. He turned to Lily. We need to get you to safety. The secure area. I'm not leaving you, Lily interrupted firmly. This is not a debate, Talon began, but the sound of energy weapons discharging somewhere in the residence cut him off. Too late, he muttered. They're already inside. Varric status. Security forces engaging the intruders on levels 2 and 3, Varric reported. But we're outmatched. Their weapons are military grade. Talon moved swiftly to a section of wall that slid open at his touch, revealing a small arsenal of weapons. He selected what appeared to be a compact energy pistol and handed it to Lily. Do you know how to use this? Lily examined the weapon. It was similar enough to the mining tools she had used on New Verdant. Point and discharge. I can manage. Good. Stay close to me. Talon selected a larger weapon for himself and moved toward a concealed door at the back of the study. This connects to my private laboratory. From there, we can access an emergency exit tunnel that leads to a secure facility. As they moved through the hidden passage, the sounds of combat grew louder. The narrow corridor led them to Talon's laboratory, but as they entered, they found they were not alone. 2 figures in sleek black armor stood examining the research materials displayed on Talon's workstations. Talon reacted instantly, firing his weapon in a swift, precise motion. One of the intruders went down, but the other returned fire, forcing Talon and Lily to take cover behind a large piece of equipment. We need to get to the far wall, Talon said in a low voice. The exit is behind the specimen containment unit. Lily nodded, her heart pounding. I'll draw their fire. You make for the exit. Before Talon could protest, Lily leaned out from their cover and fired several shots in rapid succession. The intruder ducked, returning fire but focusing on Lily's position. Talon seized the opportunity to move swiftly across the laboratory. The distraction worked, but as Lily prepared to follow, a searing pain tore through her left shoulder. She fell back, clutching the wound, feeling warm blood seeping between her fingers. Lily, Talon's voice was sharp with concern. I'm hit, she gasped, but I can move. Gritting her teeth against the pain, Lily scrambled toward Talon's position as he provided covering fire. Just as she reached him, the laboratory door slid open, and 3 more armored figures entered. Go, Lily urged Talon, pushing him toward the exit. Get the research out. It's too important to lose. For a moment, Talon hesitated, torn between his mission and Lily's safety. Then, to her shock, he swept her up in his arms with surprising strength and lunged for the hidden exit. His tail slapped the control panel as they passed, and the wall sealed behind them just as energy weapons fire impacted where they had been standing. The tunnel beyond was narrow and dimly lit. Talon moved quickly, still carrying Lily despite her protests that she could walk. Your injury requires treatment, he said tersely. Conserve your strength. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, sloping gradually downward. Lily, fighting to stay conscious as the shock of her injuries set in, became aware that the air was growing cooler and damper. Where does this lead? She asked, her voice weak. To an underground transport system, Talon replied. Built centuries ago during the last Draconian Civil War. Few remember it exists now. Eventually, they emerged into a larger chamber where an antiquated but serviceable transport vehicle waited. Talon set Lily carefully on a seat and activated the vehicle systems. This will take us to a secure research facility outside the city, he explained as he examined her wound. From there, we can contact allies loyal to the Emperor. The research, Lily said urgently. Did you save the data? Talon touched a pouch at his waist. Everything is here, but it would be worthless without you. As the transport hummed to life and began moving along ancient tracks, Talon produced a medical kit from a compartment beneath the seat. With practiced movements, he cleaned and treated Lily's wound, applying a strange gel that immediately numbed the pain and seemed to begin knitting the damaged tissue together. Draconian military medical technology, he explained, seeing her surprised expression. Accelerated cellular regeneration. Andy, Lily said weakly. You seem prepared for this. Talon's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of discomfort or embarrassment. I have been aware of the risks of my research for some time. Dravax's faction views any change to the status quo as a threat to their power. I took precautions. You could have warned me, Lily said, though there was no real reproach in her tone. I hoped it would not come to this, Talon replied, and I feared that telling you might cause you unnecessary worry. He finished dressing her wound and sat back. I was wrong to withhold the information. I apologize. Lily reached out with her good arm and touched his scaled hand. We're both still alive. That's what matters. The journey through the underground tunnels took several hours. Lily drifted in and out of consciousness, the draconian medical gel working to repair her injured shoulder. When she finally fully awoke, the transport had stopped, and Talon was gently shaking her. We have arrived, he said. Can you stand? With his assistance, Lily managed to get to her feet. Her shoulder was stiff but remarkably improved, the pain reduced to a dull ache. They exited the transport into another chamber, this one clearly maintained and in regular use. Modern lighting illuminated a space filled with advanced technology, and several draconians in scientific attire looked up in surprise at their arrival. Lord Talon. One of them hurried forward. We received no notification of your visit. The circumstances are unusual, Director Vala, Talon replied. My residence was attacked. We require secure communications and temporary sanctuary. The events that followed passed in a blur for Lily. There were urgent communications with allies in the Imperial City, reports of the attack being attributed to unknown terrorists, and indications that Dravax's faction was already moving to seize control of Talon's research materials and discredit his work. Through it all, Talon remained focused on two priorities: ensuring Lily's complete recovery and safeguarding their research. He rarely left her side as the facility's medical staff treated her injury with even more advanced techniques than the emergency measures he had applied in the transport. By the next day, Lily was able to move her arm with almost normal mobility, though the doctors advised against strenuous activity for at least a week. She found Talon in the facility's communications center, engaged in an intense discussion with a holographic projection of another Draconian whom she recognized as a member of the progressive faction in the Imperial Court. The attack has had unexpected consequences, the Draconian was saying as Lily entered. Public opinion is shifting. Many see it as an attempt to silence legitimate scientific inquiry. The Emperor has ordered an investigation. And Dravax? Talon asked, publicly condemning the attack, of course, while privately ensuring his involvement remains hidden, the Draconian replied. But his position is weaker than before. Several previously neutral counselors have expressed concerns about his faction's methods. So our work continues, Talon said. Yes, but perhaps not on Draconi's Prime, at least for now. The Emperor suggests you might continue your research at the Imperial Science Academy on Lemuria. It would place you under direct Imperial protection without requiring his open endorsement of your work. After the communication ended, Talon turned to find Lily watching him. You should be resting, he said, but there was no real admonishment in his tone. I've rested enough, Lily replied. So we're going to Lemuria? Talon nodded. It appears to be our best option. The Academy is politically neutral territory, and its security is directly controlled by the Emperor, not the Imperial Council. Dravax's influence there is limited. And our presentation to the Council? Delayed, not cancelled, Talon assured her. The attack has actually generated interest in our work from quarters previously indifferent to it. When we do present, we may find a more receptive audience. Lily moved closer, studying his face. You planned for this, didn't you? Not the attack specifically, but the possibility of opposition. That's why you've been cultivating allies among the progressive faction. Talon's scales shimmered slightly, his equivalent of a smile. I have learned from human strategic thinking. Your literature is full of underdogs who succeed against overwhelming odds through careful preparation and unexpected alliances. So what happens now? Lily asked. Now, Talon said, we continue our work. But first, there is something I must tell you. Something I attempted to express before we were interrupted last night. Lily felt her heart rate increase, though whether from anticipation or apprehension, she couldn't say. I'm listening. Talon seemed to struggle for words, which was unusual for him. Finally, he said, Draconians do not typically form the kind of emotional attachments that humans do. Our relationships are primarily based on mutual benefit, political alliance, or genetic compatibility for reproduction. I understand, Lily said, though she felt a strange disappointment at his words. No, you don't, Talon continued, because I find that I do not conform to this norm. My regard for you has evolved beyond scientific collaboration or even friendship as humans would define it. I find myself concerned with your happiness beyond its impact on our work. I think about you when we are not together. I feel protective of you in a way that exceeds rational assessment of your value as a research partner. Lily stared at him, scarcely believing what she was hearing. Talon, are you saying? I believe, he said carefully, that I am experiencing what humans would call love. An irrational but powerful attachment that prioritizes your well-being and happiness even above my own interests. He looked distinctly uncomfortable. It is not a state I anticipated or fully understand, but it appears to be persistent. A laugh bubbled up from Lily's chest, not mockery but pure, surprised joy. That is possibly the least romantic declaration of love I've ever heard, she said, and somehow the most meaningful. Talon's crest flattened slightly in confusion. You are not disturbed by this development? In answer, Lily stepped forward and, standing on tiptoe, pressed her lips gently to his scaled cheek. Not disturbed at all, she said softly. Quite the opposite. Their journey to Lemuria marked the beginning of a new phase not just in their research, but in their personal relationship. The Imperial Science Academy, a vast complex spread across an archipelago of artificial islands on Lemuria's single world-spanning ocean, provided both the security and the intellectual environment they needed to complete their work. Here, surrounded by the Empire's greatest scientific minds from dozens of species, their ideas found fertile ground. What had begun as Talon's personal research project expanded into a collaborative effort involving specialists in xenobiology, cultural anthropology, economic theory, and governance systems. Lily, no longer viewed primarily as a research subject or even just an assistant, became recognized as a co-author and key architect of what was now being called the integrative governance model. Her unique perspective as a human who had achieved deep understanding of draconian culture made her insights particularly valuable. And through it all, she and Talon navigated the uncharted territory of their evolving relationship. It was not always easy. Physical differences between their species presented certain challenges, and cultural misunderstandings still occurred despite their best efforts at mutual comprehension. But the very process of working through these difficulties enriched their research, providing practical examples of how genuine cross-cultural understanding could be achieved. 6 months after the attack on Talon's residence, they returned to Draconis Prime to present their completed proposal to the Imperial Council. The political landscape had shifted significantly in their absence. Dravax's faction, tainted by the unauthorized attack, had lost influence. Several previously neutral counselors had aligned themselves with the progressive faction, creating a more receptive audience for Talon and Lily's ideas. The presentation chamber was filled to capacity, with additional viewers watching via holographic projection from throughout the Empire. Lily, standing beside Talon at the central podium, surveyed the assembled Draconians with a confidence that would have been unimaginable to the frightened, insecure woman who had arrived on Draconis Prime nearly 2 years earlier. Honored counselors, Talon began, his voice resonating through the chamber. What we present today is not merely a research conclusion, but a vision for the future of the Empire. A future in which the relationship between Draconians and humans evolves from one of domination and submission to one of mutual benefit and collaborative growth. For the next several hours, they presented their findings and recommendations, addressing questions and challenges from the counselors with well-prepared responses backed by extensive data. Through it all, Lily and Talon worked in seamless coordination, their presentation itself serving as a demonstration of the potential for draconian human cooperation. When they concluded, there was a moment of silence. Then the Emperor himself rose from his ornate seat at the head of the chamber. Lord Talon, Lily Morgan, he addressed them formally. You have presented a compelling vision, one that challenges centuries of imperial tradition, yet honors the core principles upon which the empire was founded: strength through unity, progress through order. He surveyed the assembled counselors. This council will now deliberate on your proposals. Regardless of the outcome, you have contributed significantly to our understanding of human potential and the possibilities for a more integrated approach to governance of non-draconian worlds. The deliberations took 3 days. During that time, Lily and Talon remained in temporary quarters within the Imperial Palace, receiving updates from their allies on the council, but prohibited from direct participation in the discussions. On the 3rd day, they were summoned back to the council chamber. The Emperor, seated on his throne, addressed them directly. The council has reached a decision, he announced. While not all aspects of your proposal have been accepted, the core principles have been approved for implementation on a trial basis. 3 human colony worlds will be granted the status of integrated territories, with limited self-governance and representation on a newly formed advisory council. Resource sharing agreements will be restructured according to your economic models, and educational initiatives will be established to facilitate greater cultural exchange. He paused, his violet eyes fixed on Lily. Furthermore, the annual tribute system will be modified. Henceforth, tributes will be voluntary, with clear terms of service and the option to return to their worlds after a specified period. Their selection will be based on merit and potential contribution rather than political considerations. Relief and joy washed over Lily. It wasn't everything they had hoped for, but it was a significant step in the right direction, a foundation upon which further progress could be built. In recognition of your contributions, the Emperor continued, I am establishing a new Imperial Institute for Integrative Governance, to be based on Lemuria, but with satellite facilities on participating human worlds. Lord Talon, you will serve as its first director, with Lily Morgan as co-director. Murmurs swept through the chamber at this unprecedented appointment of a human to such a position. Even Talon seemed momentarily taken aback. The Institute will monitor the implementation of these changes, gather data on their effects, and continue research into improving interspecies understanding and cooperation, the Emperor explained. Its findings will guide future policy decisions regarding not just human worlds, but all non-draconian territories within the Empire. As the session concluded and they left the council chamber, Lily felt a strange sense of completion. The frightened, scarred woman who had arrived on Draconis Prime believing herself to be worthless, a diplomatic insult chosen for her ugliness, had found not just purpose but love, respect, and the opportunity to change the fate of her entire species. What are you thinking? Talon asked as they walked through the Imperial Gardens, now familiar territory rather than an alien landscape. I'm thinking about patterns, Lily replied, taking his hand in hers. How what appears to be disfigurement from one perspective can be strength from another. How being cast away can sometimes mean finding where you truly belong. Talon's scales shimmered with that special iridescence reserved for moments of deep emotion. The colonial governor who sent you here as punishment could never have imagined that his cruelty would lead to this outcome. No, Lily agreed with a smile. But then, he never really saw me. Not the way you did. I saw a pattern of extraordinary beauty and resilience, Talon said, drawing her closer. One that changed everything I thought I knew about humans, about Draconians, and about myself. As the twin suns of Draconis Prime began to set, casting the garden in golden light, Lily thought about the journey that had brought her here. From outcast to ambassador, from tribute to leader, from ugly daughter to beloved partner. It was not a path she could have imagined, but standing here with Talon, looking toward a future filled with purpose and possibility, she would not have changed a single step. What comes next? She asked, though she already knew the answer. We continue, Talon replied simply. We build upon what we have started. We show both our peoples that difference need not mean division, that understanding is possible across even the greatest divides. Together, Lily said, and it was both a statement and a promise. Together, Talon agreed, his amber eyes reflecting the sunset and a future brighter than either of them had dared to dream. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.